welcome to the show.
Hi, so great to be here.
Wonderful, wonderful. And we're so happy that you're here, Elena. For our viewers who may not be as familiar with you as I am, could you please take a minute to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about all the wonderful things you've done in your background?
Superb. I'll try to make it brief. My name is Elena Garvey. I lead the customer experience team at LinkedIn. My team has a global charter. We're responsible for the customer experience across all touch points and all products. But before I get too deep into the workings of my team, let me share just a little bit about LinkedIn. Our vision is to create economic opportunity for every member of the global workforce. It's an incredibly lofty and inspiring goal when you think about it, the potential we can have with society. So today, LinkedIn has over 850 million members around the world and millions of companies that choose to partner with us across their talent needs, from recruiting to skills development, as well as growing their business through marketing and sales solutions. And so the role of the customer experience team specifically is on making our members and customers' experience with LinkedIn easy and productive.
Wonderful, Elena. Now, that's good to hear. And for all our viewers who, if this is your first time seeing Elena, just check out her homepage on LinkedIn and you'll see all the fun things that she does in the context of CX and helping LinkedIn optimize that experience. So there's my plug for you, Elena.
Thank you. That was much appreciated. Yes, we love what we do, and we try and bring a little levity, a little fun to the world through the CX show. So definitely would love for you to check it out.
So Elena, I want to focus more on you as well. What did LinkedIn see in you, or why did you come to this role to lead the CX function here?
Great question. I, in fact, had that same question for my hiring manager once we agreed to have me in the door. I did ask, why did you choose me, and who else was in the process? That was sort of my competition during that time. So I have a very clear answer through the eyes of the person that brought me in. And that is, my background in customer experience spanned two very different types of organizations. I started 10 years ago now at American Express, a very mature, very advanced customer experience practitioner. And I learned the ways of customer experience very directly in that environment. In fact, I did an internal move from marketing into customer experience because that's what I wanted to develop in myself. I wanted to understand the secret sauce making at American Express around customer experience. And after I absorbed that knowledge, I decided to have a broader impact in the world. And I left the organization I was with to go into a different type of an environment, a brand new space where we were setting up the CX function. And so I took my CX maturity and I applied it to a very, very white space at AIG. AIG, an insurance brand, a global company, did not have a CX practice in their commercial insurance business. They hired me to lead the global function there. And the reason they hired me then was because of the experience I had already developed at Amex. And so being successful at Amex, then being successful at AIG, proved to my next hiring manager that I could do the range of roles, and I could stand up CX and I could mature CX in a variety of environments. And that is what ultimately convinced them to bring me here.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing, Elena. That's really good to know. Let me ask you this then, from your perspective right now in the role that you're in at LinkedIn, when your leadership or when your hiring managers come to you and they say, hey, great job, what are they typically relying on you for?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I have to say, LinkedIn is in its essence a very member and customer-centric organization. One of the core company values is to be member first. So the DNA of this brand, which was built almost 20 years ago, started as a customer-centric entity. And so that makes my job in many ways easier. But when the CEO looks to me or my team versus how they think about their relationship with marketing, for example, or product, the thing that we bring to the conversation, the direct value of the CX team at LinkedIn, is that we put the direct perspective of our members and customers at the front. We lead with that. So everything that the CEO, the executive team gets from us, everything that our frontline colleagues get from us, it starts with that member and customer point of view. And from there, we start to layer in, well, if this is the members and customers' point of view or their journey, how does that connect to the employee experience and their journey? How do we think about making this all work for both sides of the equation? So that's something that is unique, that's ours, that we feel very strongly, very passionately about. And why that's important is that in every organization, there's always going to be a conversation of feasibility, of timelines, of costs, of trade-offs that we need to take. What's constant for the CX team is that we always keep the perspective of our members and customers, even when the job gets hard, when we have to make those very hard choices.
That's a great experience share and a great answer, Elena. And for our viewers, I want to highlight something that Elena just said, which is not only are you focused on the member journey, the customer journey, but you're also focused on the employee journey and really clarifying for management what that overlap looks like, how it pairs on both ends. And that is so, so critical, because a lot of times we see that companies just tend to focus, on the customer journey. And that's important. That's critical to know what their pain points, their needs, their triggers are. But at the same time, only a handful focus on the employee journey and in mapping that experience. So I think that's something truly remarkable that you do, Elena, and that's something we recommend to a lot of our clients as well. As you are helping LinkedIn and not just LinkedIn, but even with your previous clients, your previous employers and organizations that you worked at, when you are helping teams optimize the customer experience, can you talk a little bit about what are some of the challenges that you face?
Absolutely. And to go back just kind of a half of a step to the earlier question, the reason why bringing the customer experience and the journey is so important to the employee experience and journey is because ultimately the impact that a CX team will have is through action. And if you can't paint that direct relationship between insight that you've gained to the action that the organization needs to make, all of it is really for nothing. And so being able to be in service of the customer, but also in service of your colleagues by painting that path towards success, painting that path to insight, action, improvement of the experience, or complete transformation of the experience is really part of our core role. And we see ourselves very successful when we're able to make that very clear versus just coming to the table with a brand new finding and an insight that has nothing else really to follow. So going back to the question you've just asked, which is some of the challenges that we typically face, I will highlight a couple. And I'm sure that many of these will be very relatable to others in the field of customer experience, but also in some other functions like marketing and other roles. So one of the very first things that we face is resistance. And resistance comes from lack of awareness, maybe lack of prior experience working with the CX team. And so on the surface, when we are new to the room or we're new to a project, not everybody's welcoming because it's the unknown entity. What is this team going to do differently? Or how will my particular function need to change as a result of them being part of this effort? I'm not sure. That kind of level of uncertainty, that level of unfamiliarity sometimes allows people to welcome us, but other times puts up a little bit of a barrier. And so that level of resistance of uncertainty is oftentimes what we deal with, especially in highly complex or highly cross-functional efforts. The way
No, go ahead.
The way that we navigate around that is sharing more about what we do, how we do it, pointing to past successes, maybe citing a highly visible initiative at the company that others will already be familiar with, either because they've seen it highlighted at a company all hands or they'd heard about it in other ways. So pointing to past success as kind of a predictor to future success is one of the ways that we may introduce ourselves to another group. Also, obviously relying on internal references, if you will. So if others on the project have had some familiarity working with us, really looking for advocacy from folks that our colleagues may be more trusting of or more familiar with.
That's a great experience shared again, Elena. And I think a lot of our peers face those same challenges, not just in the CX world, but also in the research and insights worlds as well. And something that I want to dovetail on and add to what you just said, I think what you said is perfect. I think showing people examples, showing them, getting a better understanding of their challenges is great. Something that we also recommend to our clients is go beyond the specified objectives of a project and focus on impact. Focus on impact from two layers. One is focus on the business impact that the project will have. Maybe even break it down to the financial impact that the project will have in moving the needle, for the organization. That's critical because, as you know, Elena, once you're at the C-suite level, you're talking to stakeholders at that level. Insights and journey maps are all good exercises and good visuals for them. But ultimately, what they want to always know is, well, how does this move the needle? If we are going to make an X amount of investment in this project or in this initiative, how is this going to move the needle for the organization? How is this going to move the needle for members? And what is the long-term impact? So that is something we clarify to a lot of our clients. That's our guidance, is focus on that impact, get it down to a financial impact, because then you don't have to worry about justifying ROIs later on. And then more importantly, get it to a personal impact connection as well. With internal stakeholders, like you said, sometimes people are a little cautious. Sometimes people don't know how this could impact their roles and responsibilities. So what we recommend is tie it to their personal impact as well. If this project is a success, are there any benefits to them? And, that goes back to, are they having any challenges right now in that part of the customer journey? Or are they facing any issues related to that? Does the project solve any personal pains that they may be having? And so when you tie it down to, so you've got the business impact covered, you've got the personal impact covered, all of a sudden what happens, Elena, is, and you've seen this plenty of times in your career, I'm sure, but what happens is, then all of a sudden those layers of inhibition fall down, and people suddenly start becoming stakeholders. They start becoming advocates for the work, because now they can clearly see the overall benefit, and they can also see what the personal impact is for them in their business, in their professional lives. So that's something we always do that, and that's something I remember when we started doing it. A lot of times, my clients were like, "Why are you asking me this?" And I was like, "Well, because it's important. Is this scratching a personal itch for you? Yeah, if it gets you promoted, that's great. But other than that, does this solve anything for you personally?" And I remember one time we did this and a client said, well, you know what? I think this would free up a lot of my time that I can really devote to things that are much more strategic. And so the minute they made that connection, I mean, they were like, can you do this like yesterday? Like, I need this to begin, right? And so it's a beautiful thing when it happens. And, you know, sometimes it doesn't have the result that you may desire. You may be passionate about a project, but if people have no personal, they can't see the personal impact, or there is no personal impact, the business impact is not strong enough, then as experts, my guidance to our clients is, should you really be spending your time on this project? You know?
I could not agree with you more. That definitely rings true for me. And it's such a obvious, but also so often forgotten insight. We often operate with what's in it for the customer mentality, but there's a very real what's in it for my colleagues opportunity, especially when you come into a project where you're reliant on other functional experts to make it successful. What is in it for the individual sitting to your right, to your left, across the table? That is a perspective we don't always take. We always think about the customer and therefore kind of remove ourselves from those that are nearest to us. So I love that you brought that insight here.
Wonderful, wonderful, Elena. I knew you would like that. And, that's just the kind of experience shares I wanted our viewers also to be aware of. Because as you're right, I mean, sometimes it's so obvious and it goes a little under the layer. So thank you for acknowledging that.
I would love to build on this discussion that we just had with one other point, which I think is going to ring true for a lot of organizations that are large in size, maybe matrixed, where there are a lot of functions potentially looking at the same element of the customer experience or the same customer segment. And so I talked about resistance, especially with groups that may be unfamiliar with a team like mine, the customer experience team. Another challenge that we sometimes face is overlap with projects or research initiatives that are looking at a similar part of the experience, but from a different angle. So when you think about the CX team, there are also user experience research teams, market research teams, design teams, product teams, business operations teams. There are lots and lots of different entities at a company, especially a mature company or a large company like LinkedIn, that may be investigating an opportunity, investigating an area. But each of those functions is looking at it with a very narrow lens, with a very narrow focus. And so sometimes the role of our team is to come in, understand what is the overlap in all of these various seemingly similar, seemingly connected initiatives, to see what are the gaps between those existing efforts and what are the spaces that we can be additive to, not duplicative of, but very, very clearly additive to with a customer lens. What we find 99% of the time is that each of the other teams has a specific question they're looking to resolve. Nobody's looking at the overall picture. Nobody's looking to understand the full potential of transforming that journey or really rethinking the experience. And that's the value out of a CX team. Both bringing teams together, understanding the whole, and looking at the experience in its complete state from a customer point of view.
That's another wonderful experience share that you've shared, Elena, and I really appreciate you for saying that. This is also something I want our viewers to make note of. And this is something personally helped us a lot in the work that we do as a CX and a customer journey mapping shop. I'll share with you and our viewers, when we were doing this work, a lot of times we had the same finding that you did, Elena, especially when you're speaking or you're engaged with large enterprises. And we do work across the board with clients like Amazon and Google. And so what we found was exactly the same thing that you're talking about. And so one best practice that we do that I want to highlight for everyone also is that it could work for them as well as, and it's similar to what you do, Elena, as well with your team, which is when we start a project out, before we do any research or before we do any execution or data collection, the very first thing that we always do with our clients is we'll ask for all the data, all the research, all the journey work that they may have done in the past. And then we always try to get either a workshop, like a half day, a couple of hours with different stakeholders. And initially, when for clients that didn't know about our process, they were a little hesitant because, everyone's busy. And this is like, what? Another 2-hour meeting, 3-hour meeting? Can we do without it? And so initially we had to face some resistance. But then when clients started doing it and they saw the benefits. So what would happen is we would have these workshops and we would have different teams, different departments being represented that were all part of that customer viewpoint, that customer journey. And then you would have, and our role, the toughest part for us was really getting the client to agree to that. Because once we were in the room, we were the quietest people in the room, surprisingly. We would come in, sometimes we would come in with a hypothesis map of what we understood the customer journey to be, or the member journey to be. And our brief to the audience was, hey guys, just help us butcher this. This is our understanding of what your customer or member journey looks like right now. But this is just based on what we've gathered from you. Help us butcher this. So someone would get up, like, someone in marketing would get up and they would be like, well, in this initial stage or in this stage, I think I see what you guys have and it makes complete sense to me. I think this is absolutely correct. And then all of a sudden, someone in operations or sales, someone else would get up and they say, I don't know. I mean, this just doesn't jive with what I see every day. And, when we heard that, we would be like, we would just start typing our notes because we were like, okay. And, and then the teams would go at it, right? Where they would make their case. And then the earlier folks would look at them and say, you may have a point over there. I never thought of it like that. That's just not what we see. So this workshop was supposed to be guiding our CX, our journey work. All of a sudden, it becomes an HR-sponsored team building exercise, right? But it's a lot of fun because for us, it very clearly identifies where the gaps in understanding are. And so when we identify those, we plan all our journey work, all our research to go fill those gaps in. And the advantage we then have is now we have these stakeholders that are involved because they felt heard, they identified gaps, and now they're also advocates in a way because they're like rooting for the work to come out. And we're testing hypotheses, we're filling these gaps in our work. But the best part, Elena, as CX and research experts, we put in all that time and investment and effort. And because of that workshop, till date, over a decade of doing this work, we've never had a client come back and say, well, you guys didn't do anything new. You didn't tell me anything new that I didn't know. Because everything that we did was to fill the gaps or to validate or to break a stalemate. Right? Where one department felt, no, this is right, another one, and then you get the voice of the customer. So I went off on this experience share because what you said really connected, and I wanted our viewers to see that it's not just us as a agency that's doing this, you're also doing this internally. These are battle-tested techniques.
Absolutely. And the best thing is once you identify what those gaps are and you start filling them, the findings, the insights that you gather will suddenly inform 50 other initiatives, and people will readily take the learning and apply it versus having to be convinced that it is something that they need to heed the advice of. Exactly for that reason, they are now invested in what happens next.
Wonderful, wonderful. So let's zoom in, Elena, and let's focus on any customer journey work or projects that you've done. They don't have to be at LinkedIn. They can also be at a previous organization. But if you can please talk about what made you embark on better understanding the customer journey. How did you go about it? Any gold nuggets that you can share with viewers? There are people listening who've done a lot of this work, and there are people listening who've never done this work. So I think people will be leaning in now.
That's great. I hope they've been leaning in all along, but this question will definitely get their attention. So much to highlight, but I will probably share 2 examples on recent customer journey research that we had done. So one initiative that's actually still underway, so it's a pretty current endeavor that we are currently working through, is to look at opposite ends of the customer journey. One example of customers who are, now let me rewind. We're actually going to have to edit and start over on that one. So the example I'd like to highlight is the following. We identified customers who were the current users of the experience that we were studying, and we interviewed them about that experience. We then went to the opposite end and decided to interview customers who had a lot of the similar attributes to the first group, but who were not using part of the experience that we are currently focused on. And so the point of that study, comparing the 2 groups, was that we were trying to learn, why is it that some customers are and others aren't relying on these features or relying on these particular aspects of the experience. The reason why that's important is that we see customers getting more value, being a lot more successful when they do. And therefore, we would love to learn, how can we introduce them to these features, or how can we make them aware? How can we present the benefits of why availing themselves to these services would make sense? And so right now we are doing that research. We're trying to understand the difference between the more successful customers who are using certain aspects of the experience and those that look like they could benefit but are currently not doing that. Being able to compare and contrast will give us ideas for how we may create a better onboarding process so that customers can learn and decide whether they would like to follow through and take advantage of those features.
Wonderful, Elena. That's, I find that to be really interesting, how you are talking or evaluating member customer experiences at both ends of the spectrum. I think that's a very innovative take. In terms of benefits of this work, is there, I understand that this work is still going on, right?
That's right. This initiative is underway.
From your perspective, what key benefits are you hopefully looking to achieve as an organization from this effort?
We have a belief, we have a philosophy at LinkedIn that is goes something like this: when our customers win, we win. And it sounds like, a bit of a rallying cry that someone will get on a stage and shout to a large auditorium filled with thousands of employees. And yes, it does happen exactly in that setting, but also it is very core to how we operate. We believe that if our customers are realizing value, they're realizing return on their investment with LinkedIn, they're getting strategic guidance, they're getting support, they're getting skills development in the roles. Just like you said, what is their personal why? Not just for their company or for their team, but what is it that they're getting out of this relationship? We believe that if they see that clear benefit, they will be more successful, and therefore we will be more successful. And so when we're looking at these 2 customer groups and we see an opportunity to make more of our customers successful, we don't pass it by. We want to help them. It creates a positive effect for our business as well by helping them, helping their organizations grow. It will most certainly create positive benefits for LinkedIn. And so it's very consistent with our company's philosophy and was a great case study for the customer experience team. It's also a model we can apply in many other situations. There will always be groups of customers that are more successful than others. And so being able to replicate this research approach elsewhere in the business is something that I can see us continuing with.
Excellent, Elena. I know we're almost at the end of our time, but I want to ask you one final question. And this is something I ask all our guests, but I know how passionate you are about the work that you do. In reflecting on this project or any other journey project that you may have done, now in hindsight, or if you had to do the same project again, is there anything that you would do different or you would do, to improve the outcome or the project?
I have a lot of tips. I have a lot of tips that my team has already taken, and we're starting to apply them ourselves. And hopefully these will be helpful to others as well. One tip, one best practice that we've learned and now started to apply is that we are engaging teams that will be responsible for what happens next way earlier than in the past. So our program cycle may be 3 months, maybe 6 months, maybe 9 months. In the past, we would wait to bring teams that are then responsible for prioritization, execution, delivery of the recommendation until the final stages of our work. So it would be month 3 or month 6 or month 9 of our engagement. Now we are asking those partners to be part of the ride, if you will, much earlier. And what that does is it brings them along. It makes them much more invested, and it helps us be better partners to them at the moment of that handoff. First of all, preparing them for what's coming, making sure that they have capacity to jump in and very smoothly continue the project with its existing momentum versus slowing things down and then ramping up again. So that's one best practice that we believe is going to help us keep going with the work at an accelerated pace. The other best practice is we often complete a particular research study or a customer journey effort, and then we get asked questions, well, what about these kinds of customers, or what about that segment? And so what we are trying to do more of is think upfront, even though we may have a very specific audience that is part of our problem statement. What other audiences, if we were to fast forward the clock 3-6 months, might our team be interested in? And can we expand our scope upfront in order to tap into them? So as an example, we may be talking to small, medium businesses who bought X product, in the recent quarter or 6 months period. Well, what about those that didn't buy? Will questions come up about not only those that succeeded, but those that may have been presented with the option of purchasing and decided to go elsewhere? And so thinking about all of the types of business questions and business opportunities that are translating to customer opportunities upfront is another thing. And then I'll leave with one more tip. I know we're trying to wrap up the conversation. Building in more time for socializing ideas. There's never enough of that time, honestly, because it is always the gnarliest problems that we solve. These are not simple one and done customer experience matters that we get involved with. These are well-known, very complicated, very, cross-functional issues. And so making sure that before we go into a steerco or a readout of research, that we've spent time with individuals, someone from sales, someone from marketing, someone from the operations team, understanding what does this mean, understanding how that team will perceive these findings. What else can they help us in terms of context? The customer point of view is very important. What about the context, as I mentioned earlier, of the team servicing that customer? What do we know about the systems that they have access to, the processes that they're asked to follow, and their own journey in order to meet the customer where the customer needs us to be? So doing a bit of that socialization and prep work. Like I said, there's never enough time for this, but remembering to build that into our project plan to make sure that when we get in front of a large group, we've anticipated and we've prepared ourselves for a great discussion.
Wonderful. If anyone's been keeping track, I think I must have said wonderful 10, 20 times in this conversation, but that's truly how I feel about this. So I think this was an excellent conversation, Elena, and I'm sure our viewers will pick up a lot of good gold insights, gold nuggets from this discussion. So thank you again for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, and appreciate the time to share, as all of us are always on a journey to learn more and become great at this.